Leaders of the 20 clubs who met in London on Tuesday, December 18th, have asked the Premier League to work on 2 proposals to ensure that the world's richest league remains financially stable, sources familiar with the talk said. The first will be modelled on UEFA's financial fair play system and would require clubs to move towards break-even, while the second would place an annual limit on how much salaries could increase. That's a very interesting second bit. The support of 14 clubs will be needed for any proposal to be adopted. Man City have reported a net loss of almost 100 million in 2011-2012, despite winning the Premier League title for the first time in 44 years. Clubs like City and Chelsea, who won the Champions League last May, have fabulously wealthy owners who have spent hundreds of millions of pounds on building successful teams. But UEFA's financial fair play rules mean clubs have to curb their losses or risk exclusion from top European competitions from 2014-2015. Details of sanctions for breaking any new Premier League curbs have yet to be worked out, but current thinking is they should focus on measures like transfer embargoes rather than points deductions. Speaking of financial fair play, which was mentioned there, Malaga receive financial fair play ban from Europe, and this is another one from a couple of weeks ago, whereby the ban does not apply this season, but will take effect the next time the Qatari-owned club qualifies for European competition in the next 4 years, UEFA said in a statement. The ban will be extended for a further season unless Malaga can prove by the end of March that they have settled outstanding payments to other teams, staff and tax authorities. Malaga have also been fined €300,000. The punishment underlines that UEFA is serious about enforcing financial fair play rules that are being phased in. My fear with financial fair play has always been, and those of you who listen to us regularly and interact with us regularly will know that my fear is that they're only going to really enforce it on certain clubs, and those certain clubs will be the smaller clubs, because Malaga, they're not European superpowers. Now, where UEFA need to start drawing lines is under teams like, say, Chelsea, Manchester City, Manchester United, with all the debt that they're carrying. The only thing really keeping them afloat is their international revenues. Also Real Madrid. Kaká and Ronaldo weren't bought with Real Madrid's money, that was bought with a loan. How they got that? We had a pitch talk rant of the week about 2 years ago in regards to that. I mean, I mean, it's good that they've said to Malaga, right, you're banned for at least a season because of unpaid bills, but they do need, as said, castigate uniformly and in a draconian fashion. They need to be going after the bigger teams as well, to make even more of a statement. Because, all right, Malaga, they're in the last 16 of Champions League, fine, that does make a statement. But if you start hitting off the bigger teams, then other teams are going to be like, ooh, they're not, to coin a phrase, ooh, they're not rampant. Ooh. And UEFA, it's kind of weird, because I think it was Platini who said a few months ago that they weren't looking to throw teams out of competitions. So now with them throwing Malaga out of next season's competition, it's kind of UEFA sending mixed messages. Instead of, throwing teams out, do they mean we're not looking to throw big teams out? Is that what they mean by that? Because for me, it looks like that's what they mean. So, odd one. It's a very, very odd one. But G-Man, what do you reckon about this? And Gezzie, if you want to jump in as well, and then we'll throw it out to the Skypers.
Well, just touching on the Malaga situation. Malaga situation, I guess. I didn't want to touch on that first. I wanted to touch on the FA and
the Premier League.
The Premier League. But just touching on the Premier League first, yeah. Personally, I don't think they can bring in place what I want to see over in place in the Premiership. But personally, I do want to see strict law. I want to see what Americans have in their sports. I want to see, I'm not talking about the draft and stuff like that. Don't really understand it, but I'm talking about in terms of like brackets, wage brackets. I feel that we need wage brackets over here. I feel that players need to feel entitled at certain ages to receive certain amount of money and a certain level, not just because they broke through and they feel that they can wrangle clubs for higher prices. For instance, I'll give you an example. Like Theo Walker at Arsenal, yeah, he's demanding 100 grand a week, yeah. Now, fair enough, good player, decent, been there 8 years. He might have said he's pulled in a shift, but tell me honestly, what says that he deserves 100 grand a week? What have Arsenal won since they signed him?
Nothing.
What? So where in his contract? In his contract it says, yep, you've got bonuses and blah 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 and ready to tear what they've agreed. But honestly, like, you're in any other job in the world and you ain't performing, you ain't gonna get that sort of bonus unless you're a banker. If you get where I'm trying to come from, and I reckon, yeah, people might say, but that's sort of an elitist way to think, and the best clubs will only harness from the situation. Well, not necessarily, because if you've got a player who is one of your best players and he ain't putting in the performances, then he won't be able to garner the sort of wages that he wants, and that means even like moving to certain clubs, he won't be able to garner those sort of wages. So it would reflect that it would be pointless for him moving, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That like it would help the decision. Like Van Persie moving to Manchester United again, no sour grapes here and whatnot, but he's a great player, and the difference between him and Theo Walcott, you could see that he was performing.
Yeah.
So that's why he got his move. That's why Man United paid 24 million. That makes a lot more sense. Theo Walcott, on the other hand, yeah, and any other player in his situation, it's like you look at the situation and you're thinking, well, you're rather inconsistent. You're demanding an awful amount a lot, and it looks like you're only putting on the performances when you want to put on the performances.
Yeah. I mean, Gezzie Fizzle has said Raheem Sterling wanted to do the same, but actually, Gezzie, that was only rumours. That was actually rumours, and that was never proven. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not even saying that because I'm a Liverpool fan. It actually was never proven. Yeah. He actually came out and said, no, that's actually not true. So it's one of them was. But I see where you're going in terms of money grabbing players and that.
But this is where I mean, like,
it looks like the Premier League are trying to get towards a salary cap.
There should be caps.
Looks like they're trying to get towards it.
But we need to be rigid caps. And it's not just. I can just imagine how the Premiership does it.
It'd be it's dependent on how much you're earning, and there'll be loopholes. Yeah. Just like financial fair play, it looks like there'll be loopholes. But I mean, it's one of them ones where a salary cap. We went through this, I think it's like a year and a half ago on a show where I think it was something to do with the European Court of Human Rights would almost make a salary cap impossible, because you can't put a ceiling on what someone earns. Yeah. Apparently, I don't know the European laws, but apparently that would be a major issue. Same with thing with UEFA in terms of trying to throw teams out of tournaments and that kind of thing. Apparently there's that issue as well in terms of the European Court of Arbitration for Sport and that kind of thing, kind of getting involved with it. But I mean, go.
I was gonna say, do you know? Just looking at it, look how easy, how good a salary cap would be. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you look at what they brought in a couple of seasons ago, where you've got a limited amount of players you can field for a season. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an excellent idea, and the amount of youth players you have to have in that mixture as well, and whatnot. 6+5 to me, that's an excellent idea. Add a salary cap to that, then it would make it even harder for clubs and players to manipulate the situation, like Manchester City buying in bulk and sticking expensive players in their clubs, and then trying to keep them there at the best periods of their life, or the best periods of their the best periods of their lives.
But there's loopholes. There are loopholes.
There might be loopholes, but if there was a salary cap, if the FA brought in some sort of salary cap, my ideal salary cap would be like, look, if dependent on where you finish in the league is dependent on how much your players can earn, and that these salaries will be knocked down in terms of where you finish in the league. So if you finish in the top 2, your players maximum they could earn is 80,000. Just say, yeah. If you finish in the between 4 and 6, your players could be on 60,000. Yeah. Now players in those clubs, yeah. Just say you're Manchester United and you finish first. One season you're earning 80,000. Next season your club has to knock you down to 60,000 if you finish below that. Now that might sound harsh, but that should be a harsh reality that players that the game should implement to help teams as well as, because it would help teams below as well.
Yeah. But then
unbelievable, because it means players couldn't just jump ship.
But there's always loopholes. I mean, the homegrown rule had a huge loophole in it. And Emiliano Insua was basically proved the loophole with the homegrown rule. Oh, you've got to have a player. You've got to have had, for a player to qualify as homegrown, you've got to have had him for at least 3 years before his 21st birthday. We had Insua since he was at 16, 17, but he's Brazilian.
Yeah.
So there's always loopholes, and the big clubs will always find those loopholes. I mean, there's always some sort of loophole and way around it. I mean, Michael Howlett put in the chat, the big teams think they have all the money around. Think of the lower league and non-league clubs who are struggling to have money available. Hope the big sides start to realise that, as well as fans of the big clubs. The footballing pyramid. And all right, basing it on league positions, I can understand that. But at the same time, if it's like in Scotland, or like what it was in Scotland, like what it is in La Liga, if it's the same 2 teams always at the top, then they're getting further and further away, and everyone else is dropping because they can't afford to keep up. There's that side of it as well. And that's also a concern. And especially for the lower league clubs as well, it's always that as well. So, I mean, Gezzie Fizzle, you've dropped a couple of interesting things in the chat as well, haven't you, in regards to this point? Gezzie, did you want to jump in as well, then?
I don't know. I mean, what I was saying was, I think that in proportion to league position, it's far too harsh, because all you'll see is other players from the teams that finish lower down wanting to move to the teams that will potentially finish higher up to get more money. That's the only thing that would happen, and not vice versa.
Yeah.
So what you're then going to have is just like what you have at Manchester City, and to a lesser extent Chelsea, and even more to a lesser extent QPR, because we're talking about quality overall, is you're going to have the clubs at the top of the table with more players, and the clubs at the bottom of the tables not so much.
Well, it'd be one of them ones, like you said, G-Man, it'd be like what the G-Man said, it'd be a case of teams just hoarding players. Because like we always said about Scott Sinclair and Jack Rodwell. Jack Rodwell got 3 games at the beginning of his Man City career in a row, and has he featured since? No, he hasn't. Scott Sinclair has had 1 game in the past couple months, and that was 60 minutes in the Champions League, and that was it. It's one of them ones. You'll get the bigger teams, as they do now, buying up players and just hoarding it.
Maybe so, but
and it'll become even worse. It'll become even worse potentially.
Not necessarily, because of that. I mean, the way I'm trying to explain it in an ideal world is like, think about it. If clubs are, just say they're only allowed a 24-man squad.
Yeah.
Now you've got 24-man squad. Most of your team's on 80,000. You won the league before. Your team don't look like they're going to be finishing. All right, fair enough. You're going to say, they're going to jump ship and go to the team above. But the team above's got players of a caliber that's already winning the league. That's not necessarily the case, you know. And the club is going to need to freshen up. Players are going to have to move, and maybe that's down. I don't. Maybe it's just being unreal. I am.
Well, the key word you said was ideal world.
Ideal world, but it's just that I just imagine that it would help move players around because the players are moving around more than they did. There's no team players no more. Everyone's moving from club to club, season to season. You can get players moving from 5 clubs in the space of like 3-4 seasons. So
yeah, it's a difficult one. It is a difficult one, but salary cap would have to be done the correct way. And the powers that be, hey, it's on you guys. The FA, Premier League, it's on you. It's on you, baby. You got to get it right.
Well, I was going to suggest an alternative.
All right,
an alternative was going to be that what you could also do, instead of increasing wages, is just give a player a percentage of how much money they actually generate through the club, whether it's through shirt sales, advert appearances, that sort of type of thing. Do you know what I mean? So if we use the specific example of shirt sales, if you have a particular player that, you know, when you go to the stadium on match day, say a good 60% of the fans, home fans that are there, are wearing this particular player's shirt, and he generates a certain amount of money, if he gets a portion out of that, I don't really think there's a lot wrong with that. You see what I mean? But his base wage should stay the same.
So very similar to professional wrestling, whereby the biggest draw is the one taking home the most. So Hulk Hogan is not going to take home. Hulk Hogan's not going to take home the same amount as Dwayne Gill, aka Gilbert.
Just was going to add into there. What about Nicky Butt?
Oh crap!
How much did he take home?
Oh, that's deep.
Cold-blooded. That's my point. So I'm saying that the base wage could stay the same, but if you're doing stuff to generate interest for the club, whether it's, you know, in the UK or abroad, for example, then I don't see the problem with giving the player a chunk of that money to keep them happy. After all, it's their hard work that's doing it. So say, for example, you have certain players who also act as ambassadors for the club, whether it's at youth level, grassroots level, so on and so forth. If they're doing a good enough job and raising the profile of the club, give them some money for it.
No, I heard that. Like,
but you know, in terms of them having a literally astronomical base salary, no. Because the problem with that is like you said, you're going to get players who are going to basically mail in their performance. They're not going to give you the same effort.
Well, so like QPR until a few weeks ago, isn't it? It's a case of you'll be seeing well, not even just QPR, but like WCW. People are like they're not putting in the effort, and because whatever happens, they're getting paid anyway. They just don't give a damn, and they end up phoning it in. So it's one of them ones. I mean, Michael Howlett, seeing as you're just back, we'd like to hear your voice for the first time. And we read out earlier your view about the big teams thinking they have all the money, and we did speak about the footballing pyramid. But Michael, Mr. Michael Howlett, would you like to add something into this conversation?
Yeah, it's not that they think they've got all the money. It's just people that support the big sides and think all there is the Premiership. When there's lower league teams in non-league and lower leagues like Rushden and Diamonds, Kettering, Portsmouth that are struggling for the money, struggling to keep going, and there are some people that I know, the Premiership's the only league around, when there's not. There's perfectly good level. There's perfectly good levels at non-league. I'm a Bedford Town supporter, which is non-league. Supported them since I was a kid, follow them home and away everywhere. And you know, I do get taken the mick out of me, but to be honest, I'd rather see my local side keep going.
No, of course. No, it's one of them, of course. I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. At the end of the day, the football pyramid, the base of the football pyramid has to be solid. And you can't have the top of the footballing pyramid taking all the money and the resources, because it's not fair on everyone else. I mean, I personally, and our next segment is actually the grassroots segment, and it's a case of like I play for Ibis, who are an amateur league side, and at the end of the day, like the grassroots football, there's so much passion, there's so much fervor in it. It's a case of, if that was to die, if the bottom falls out, there ain't going to be no top. And that's what a lot of people don't realise. I mean, football's on a way to, at least top level football is on its way to a catastrophic meltdown, and has been for a number of years. And I've said it for a number of years. But there's 96 teams in the Football League. At the end of the day, you got to take care of all of them, or else you're going to get teams falling out and dropping out of business. And it's not fair when it can be easily avoided. All right, some owners run clubs into the ground, but at the end of the day, the powers that be have to help the game. they have to put back into the game rather than just taking out and looking at it as a cash cow. You have to do what's good for the game. Salary caps, great for the game. Financial fair play, I've always said, if it's enforced properly, it will be Platini's greatest achievement, bar none. Forget his playing days. That will be his greatest achievement for football, for me. But it's got to be enforced properly. And for me, that's the jack. But you know what, yeah? What's he gonna say, Jay?
I don't really like the idea of financial fair play.
I love it. It has to be.
Not in the way that's described. Personally, I think there should be a cap on what teams can spend.
But that's what they're trying to get to.
No, but it's based on revenue and what they earn and stuff like that. I reckon it should be a baseline cap. Like, just say season 1 you can only spend 40 million. No club can spend over 40 million, and that's it. That personally, I think that would be fair game to everyone else. Because if you had that, bigger clubs would struggle as well as littler clubs, and middle clubs would probably benefit more out of it because they know how to do the best business with it.
Interesting one. That is an interesting one. I want to keep that one in mind. Actually, that is a very interesting point. All right.